Hello everyone, I'm Susan Lee McDonald with the INNERview. When you think of Korea, what do you think of? K-pop, Gangnam Style, or maybe kimchi? How about Taekwondo? Korea is known as the home of Taekwondo, and we are here at none other than the Gukgiwon, which is the home of Taekwondo. We're about to meet a very special guest who has spent over 23 years of his life here in Korea in pursuit of Taekwondo and Korean literature. Let's go meet our very special guest, Stephen Capener. Hi, Stephen.
Hello, Susan. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
So good to see you.
And you?
I'm so thrilled that you're going to be on my show.
Oh, thank you for asking me.
Yeah, definitely.
Welcome to the Gukgiwon, by the way.
Thank you. You know, it's been a really long time since I've been here.
Has it? When I worked here almost 23 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So you've had a long history with the Gukgiwon and with Taekwondo.
This was my first job in Korea. Yeah. And of course I did Taekwondo much before I came here, but yeah, this is very much a part of my history with this country. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really excited to get a chance to talk to you more about Taekwondo, and I know that our staff is getting set up inside. So are you ready to go and do our interview?
Sure. Would you like to meet the president first and maybe say hello?
Oh, I would love to do that. Yeah,
maybe that's what we should do first.
Okay, fantastic. Okay.
All right, this way?
Okay, wonderful. Lead the way. 안녕하세요. 반갑습니다.
들어오세요.
안녕하세요, 원장님. 수장 미케라드라고 합니다. 반갑습니다.
예.
원장님이 운동을 하시는 분이라서 그런지 굉장히 젊어 보이세요.
아유, 그렇게 적게 봐주시니까 고맙습니다. 우리 스티브 캐브러 씨 뭐냐? 정말 태권도가 좋아서 그 이름만이 한국에 와서 이렇게 정착을 하고 사는 걸 왔을 적에 과연 태권도가 좋구나라는 것을 실감을 하고 우리 한국인뿐만이 아니라 이제는 지구촌 태권도 가족들이 뭐 8천만 명 이렇게 추산을 하고 있습니다.
굉장하네요.
예, 그래서 이제 태권도를 통해서 하나는 세상을 이룩하는데 국기원이 중심적인 역할을 해야겠다. 그것이 바로 세계 평화를 위해서도 기여하는 것이고 또 그것이 태권도 연합의 자긍심과 보람을 찾는 일이 아닌가 이렇게 생각이 됩니다.
그럼 어떻게 스티븐 캠퍼 교수님하고는 어떤 인연이신지?
벌써 뭐 한
제가 89년도부터 여기 근무를 했지 않습니까, 원장님? 그때
같이 근무했었어요.
네, 어떤 일을 했었어요?
태권도 학회를 만들어서 회장을 할 적에 저를 많이 서포트를 해줬고
그때부터 원장님 저를 엄청 예뻐해 주시고 많이 도와주시는데 그리고 이제 태권도 세계적으로 이제 퍼지는 그런 발전에 누구보다도 기여를 많이 하신 분입니다. 그거 아셔야 되고요.
그래서 이제 태권도가 물론 무예에서 이제 스포츠로 뭐 이렇게 발돋움을 해서 뭐 무예 스포츠다라고 하지만은 기술만이 아니라 호신의 방편만이 아니라 정신적으로 뭔가 그 인간다운 면을 아마 양성하는데 기여를 한다. 그래서 흔히 요즘 청소년 폭행 이런 문제에도 태권도를 통해서 많이 순화하고자 하는 그 나라들이 그 학교 교과 과목으로 이렇게 채택하는 나라들이 하나씩 둘씩 늘었을 적에 보람을 찾고 더더욱 우리가 열심히 해서 지구촌 태권도 가족들의 길잡이 역할을 제대로 해야겠다라는 그런 생각을 자주 하게 됩니다. 계속 노력을 하겠습니다.
네, 아유 오늘 너무 잘 부탁드리겠습니다.
네,
아유 감사합니다.
건강하십시오.
Stephen Capener, a master of Taekwondo who has pursued Korean martial arts with a passion. He first fell in love with martial arts through the 1973 action movie Enter the Dragon, and knocked on the doors of a Taekwondo studio in Montana. 13 years later, he became a Pan-American gold medalist and a rising Taekwondo star. But a knee injury kept him from pursuing a career in competitive Taekwondo. The next year, Capener came to Korea to study Taekwondo and joined the Gukgiwon, where he helped to globalize Taekwondo, Capener's love for Taekwondo led him to earn a doctorate from Seoul National University in sports philosophy. In the year 2000, he wrote a book called Taekwondo, The Spirit of Korea, which helped to raise awareness about Taekwondo. Although he no longer competes in Taekwondo, he remains a passionate practitioner and teacher in the martial arts. Capener is currently a professor at Seoul Women's University and is preparing for his 8th Dan test. Join me, Susan Lee MacDonald, and hear about his dynamic story on this week's The Interview. I like how you're wearing your Taekwondo shoes today.
I wanted to be in costume, and also I wanted my feet to be warm.
Well, I'm really jealous because my feet are starting to be a little cold.
It's something you learn if you spend a lot of time in cold gyms.
I imagine.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your Korean name, Sothaebu. How did you come up with that name?
Actually, I didn't come up with it, and it was given to me in this building. When I first came to work here for the World Taekwondo Federation, one of my co-workers decided that I think he did it for fun initially.
What do those individual characters mean?
The Salt character is the character for West,
Okay.
and Tae is the Taekwondo Tae, and Bu is man, someone that does something like a fisherman is an Obu, a fish man,
Yes.
right? So I'm the Taekwondo man from the West.
So with coming to Korea and doing Taekwondo as soon as you stepped onto Korean land, what was it like for you when you first came here?
I came several times to train and compete before I came to live, and I remember the first time I came to Korea, I remember flying in over the rice fields that surround Gimpo Airport and seeing, very few lights, and I could make out the rice fields, and it was almost I guess what I had imagined an Asian country to be like. It's my first visit, and it was very sort of in a way romantic and it's exciting at the same time. And so the city of Seoul, lived up to all those expectations. It was very, very different from my home.
Now, your hometown is in Montana, is that
Montana,
right?
yeah, and from
so different
the
from
mountains,
here.
yeah, and then I stepped off the plane in this very big, bustling city, but that had a very, very different vibe than any city I'd been in before. And honestly, I was fascinated initially. Yeah.
So what was it that first got you interested in martial arts?
The same thing that got every other kid my age interested in martial arts. It was the early and mid 70s, and the so-called kungfu craze hit the United States with Bruce Lee movies, Kung Fu, the television series, and it was so fascinating for kids like us because it not only had the aspects of people kicking ass, if I can say that, but there was this implied spiritual aspect too, that the spiritual strength that we obviously romanticize, and it was obviously exaggerated, but still that was a very attractive point for me and other people that Hollywood took that and ran pretty far with it, but still, that was one of the things that interested me initially.
So the aspect of kind of meditating, the aspect of using one's energy and channeling that energy to fight?
Simply put, the idea that power came not only from your body, but from your mind as well. Yeah.
Very interesting. Is there a particular scene in one of those movies that really kind of sticks out to you?
Well, everyone that fell in love with the martial arts at the same time I did, has the same sort of iconic scenes that they remember. Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon, there are several. He tries to stab him, and first of all, the first one, which is actually related to Taekwondo, he kicks the bad guy. The guy grabs his foot and he does a backflip and kicks him in midair. Now, I heard that actually that was a Korean that did that, a Taekwondo guy, yes. And I've actually heard that story several times over the years. I wouldn't stake my life on it, but I've heard it enough times that I think And I've watched it carefully. I don't think that's Bruce Lee doing that.
I see.
So, there were, but
Like a stunt double.
all of those scenes were related to very flamboyant kicking, which I think was one of the things that drew me to Taekwondo.
Interesting. Taekwondo wasn't just a hobby. It wasn't just something that you did in your spare time. It was something that you really put many, many hours of practice. Give me an idea of how much time you put into Taekwondo on kind of a daily basis when you were first starting out and when you first came to Korea.
Well, as a high school student, there's only so much time that I can. I think we only had class twice or 3 times a week. By the time I became a university student and I realized that I could actually go somewhere as an athlete. In fact, in college, I moved to another city where the best players in my state had sort of congregated and formed a team. And we all got together and made something called Big Sky Taekwondo, which was a team with the purpose of producing national champions.
Interesting.
So I actually moved to the other state university for a couple of years and lived in a basement cold water flat, closet-sized thing, and
really roughing it for Taekwondo.
and we trained like professional athletes twice a day, 6 or so hours a day, and then did our other. Some people worked, some people went to school, but it was at a very, very elite and professional level.
What was it that made you want to take Taekwondo further and go professionally?
My personality, that's definitely my personality.
Yeah.
I was always very competitive, and I like the idea of perfection. And so the demonstration of perfection is to, get to the top of whatever heap it is you're trying to climb, right? So the idea of technical and physical perfection, for me, would be demonstrated when I was the champion in my division.
Wow. Well, it certainly got you onto the U.S. national team, though. And I'd love to hear more about your experience on the national team.
The first year I made the U.S. National Collegiate Team in a year that they had the World Collegiate Taekwondo Championships.
Okay.
So I actually got very close a couple of times for the World Championships before that. In 1985, I came in 3rd place, and then in '86, like I said, I finally made the collegiate national team and went to the World Championships.
That must have been a great feeling to do that.
It was really great, and the thing that was even better was that I got to go to Korea just before the World Championships, the first time. I was on a team from New York, and all expenses paid trip to Korea to compete against 2 teams, the Seoul City team and the Dongwon University team.
How did that happen?
The Greater New York City Taekwondo Association put together this team as a sort of, I guess, a motivation for local schools and local athletes. And I sort of snuck in the back door because I'm not from New York, but a couple of my friends are. And so I went out and competed under the name of a friend's school and won my division. So
nice.
I got to go. And so I had the opportunity to compete in Korea several weeks before I came back and fought in the World Championships. So it was a big advantage.
So competing in Korea must have given you quite some motivation to do great at the championships then.
It taught me 2 things. It taught me that I actually could compete against Koreans. I won one match and lost the other. And it also taught me that Korea was still the center of world Taekwondo. They were changing and evolving so quickly. The first game I actually won because I think the Korean didn't think I knew that much Taekwondo. But obviously people were talking in between the first game and the second game because the second match, the guy had obviously researched what I did and what I knew, and he handed it to me.
So he knew his opponent really well.
Yeah, he knew what I was going to bring. But even so, they still just had more Taekwondo than anybody else at that point.
It's so easy for a lot of people to start a sport or start dance or a piano or whatever quote unquote hobby, but to take it to the level that you did with a sport that maybe wasn't as commonly known is kind of a risk too. Now, did you ever feel that you were taking a risk by choosing this path?
I actually enjoyed that aspect of it. I enjoyed the fact that it was the path less taken, right? And that I was sort of maybe in a certain way pioneering something, or there was a sense of esprit de corps in the people around me that were as committed to Taekwondo as I was, because it was it was different. I remember Taekwondo got included in the U.S. Olympic Sport Festival in 1985, and the top 4 finishers in each division at nationals got to go. It's a multi-sport game. It's one of the U.S. Olympic Committee's preparations for the Olympics and the Pan American Games. We were there with our sweats. Some of the people that would go on to win gold medals in the 88 Olympics. Jackie Joyner-Kersee was there, it was Flojo, wasn't it? Flojo. And Carl Lewis and some really big names, and people would say, "What sport are you in?" "We're Taekwondo people." It's always, "Oh, what? We're Taekwondo." yeah, wow, Taekwondo.
Right.
But there was, it was kind of cool, because people were not sure exactly what it meant, but it sounded cool.
Right. It sounded like they didn't want to mess with you in a dark alley somewhere.
Well, yeah, we got some mileage out of that too. But it was, I think, more interesting than not to be part of a sport that wasn't really mainstream.
Now, you won the bronze in '86 at the World Championships, and also the bronze at the World Taekwondo Championships in '87.
The World Taekwondo Championships in Barcelona, Spain in '87.
And you were highly favored to do very well for the U.S. national team for the Olympics. Tell me about that story, because I hear that you were unable to participate.
I was. I also won a gold medal in the '87 Pan American Games, the first time that Taekwondo was included in the Pan Am Games. And that was a fascinating experience. Walt Disney did the opening ceremonies. We marched into the Indy 500 speedways where the opening ceremonies was held.
Wow.
And it was the really big show. And I thought, wow, this is what the Olympics must be like. So I was very ready to go to the Olympics. And in fact, in order to prepare for the Olympic trials, myself and 2 of my friends came to Korea in January of '88.
Okay.
And stayed in a yogwon.
A little motel.
A little motel nearby the Korean National College of Physical Education.
Okay.
If not one of the top Taekwondo, training facilities in the country.
Yes.
And the coach there, Professor Lee Sung-guk, who went on to become president of the university, allowed us to train. Not only allowed us, but he made us very, very welcome. He insisted that the team, embrace us and help us. And we all owe him a big debt of gratitude. One of the friends that I came with went on to win a gold medal in the '92 Olympics in Taekwondo.
Wow, they really just made you feel like family.
It was, and there were no foreigners training in Korea at that time. Later on, it became, a very fashionable thing to do. But we were some of the very first to come and actually, stay for an extended period of time.
I think that it's amazing that you had come to Korea at that time, and I'm curious about how did your body feel, and were there any injuries that you sustained at that time?
Well, I had bad luck early on with my knees. I had what they call the unholy triumvirate of knee injuries, where you tear your anterior cruciate, your medial collateral ligament, and your lateral meniscus. So I had a lot of damage. ACL, MCL, and the meniscus, right? And when I was 19, so I had a full reconstruction. I did it again at 23.
Wow.
So the knee was already, really traumatized, and I kept training. And then I injured it again 2 times in 1987, once at the World Championships. So I was sort of accumulating, a track record here that became, it was almost to the point of becoming acute. So it ended up, that and some sort of U.S. national team politics ended up keeping me out of the Olympics.
That's really unfortunate because you were probably the best player and poised for a medal at the time. Wasn't it someone who you had trained with who probably was good but not as good as you, who ended up getting a medal at the time?
My main competitor, who was a great player and dedicated himself to Taekwondo the same way I did, but that I had beaten 4 times out of 5, and the last 3 times or the last 2, and I think the gap was growing, and a lot of that was because I'd trained in Korea.
I see.
I was just developing faster, so I felt it was my division, and I should have gone, but you never know in sport. That's the way it goes. Up until the last decision is made, you don't know what's going to happen. So, but he did go on to the Olympics and win a bronze medal, and he deserved it. But I have a lot of in Korean we say miryun. I have some regrets about that for sure.
You also worked with the World Taekwondo Federation, is that correct?
That's correct.
And I'd like to learn more about your connection with them and what kind of work you did with them.
Well, that's my connection to the Kukkiwon, because when I first came to Korea to live, which was the summer of 1989, the World Taekwondo Federation's offices were located in this building.
I see.
Along with Kukkiwon. The Kukkiwon and the World Taekwondo Federation are separate organizations. The Kukkiwon is in charge of degree Dan testing for WTF Taekwondo Worldwide. The WTF is the international governing body for the sport, recognized by the International Olympic Committee. So I was hired to work in the international department. My office was right over there.
Oh, nice.
So
so we're kind of coming back full circle by being here.
Very much, very much. You saw the hill on the way up. I walked up that hill every day for 3 years.
That gives you a good workout too, I bet.
So in the summer, it's not so fun because you show up at work, looking like you need a shower. But yeah, it was very, very interesting to work here because the Kukkiwon is very much an iconic structure and an iconic organization, not only for Taekwondo people, but for Koreans in general. If you say that word Kukkiwon, they're not quite sure what it exactly means. They know it's related to Taekwondo, but it has almost, it's like some, they're not sure what goes on up in that building up on the hill.
It's a very kind of mysterious but magical place.
Right.
Where somehow a lot of people do Taekwondo. So
when people would ask me what I did and I say I worked at the Kukkiwon, very few people believed me. They thought I was making a joke. I live in a Buddhist temple or something. So yeah. The work itself was very interesting. We were actually working at trying to make the sport better, revising the competition rules, training international referees, actually trying to help the sport realize its full potential as a sport. So it was an interesting time and an interesting place to work.
What was that like to be able to come from an athlete's background and to work in that capacity?
Well, I think that's part of the reason that they hired me, that I had a pretty good education. I could help, with sort of getting this information out to an international audience, translating Taekwondo, literally in any different number of ways. But I also got later on to have input into actually the formation of the changes that were being made, the kind of, how we should educate the referees and what sort of rule changes we should make to get the best possible game that we can, the most interesting sort of technical content, because rules, of course, determine the nature of any sport.
Could you give me an example of one of the things that you helped implement?
Well, later when I came back to work for the WTF in 2007, and one of the things that I was a big part of was we changed the scoring system so that up until then, all techniques were given only 1 point. And we changed it so that a turning kick is awarded 2 points, and a face kick is awarded 3 points
Oh.
because we want to reward the more technically difficult.
Yes.
If you think of diving or gymnastics, you get the
Yes.
point. They have a degree of difficulty and they get more
Yes.
points for that. So we sort of implemented a similar system.
Wow. That's really fantastic that you were able to participate in that part, because it seems like most Olympic sports do have that degree of difficulty
Right.
kind of built into the judging system.
And again, we want the sport to, all kicking martial arts have a roundhouse kick, but not all of them have a jump spinning kick, or some of the techniques that sort of the signature techniques of Taekwondo. And so the idea is that we want to encourage players to attempt, these more difficult and frankly speaking, more appealing to an audience type of techniques.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to get into Taekwondo a little bit more with you later, but I'd like to switch gears just slightly and talk about your education here in Korea, because you went to Seoul National University, my alma mater as well, and you got a doctorate there. What prompted you to learn Korean and also go to school at one of Korea's arguably top university?
The Secretary General of the World Taekwondo Federation, the man that I worked for, advised me that, to try and further my education in order to help the sport down the road. So I looked into the possibilities of doing a graduate degree at Seoul National in sport philosophy.
At that time, you decided to do a master's and then pursue your doctorate kind of straight away.
Right.
And what was your thesis on?
My thesis was, my PhD dissertation was on the evolution of the martial arts, and what I called it was the modernization of the martial arts, with an emphasis on Taekwondo, that moving away from this sort of pre-modern concept of actually fighting with people, in the street or on a battlefield or whatever, to in modern industrial society, we don't fight with each other, generally speaking, right? So it doesn't justify spending, anywhere from 6 to 12 to 20 hours a week learning how to fight. The rationale then has to be changed, and sport is the answer. So a lot of martial arts were sportified, if I can use that term.
You also are doing some work with the Korean Literature Foundation, is that right?
Korean Literature Translation Institute, which is actually part of the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. It's a government organization, yeah.
How did you get involved with them?
Initially, I did a little bit of work for them, in that they asked me to translate a short story by an author named Yang Gwi-ja. They were publishing something called the Portable Library of Korean Literature, which was a bunch of small sort of paperback short story editions that you could carry around on the subway or whatever. They were trying to promote Korean literature, and so by doing a translation for them, I sort of developed some relationships there. And now the current president of the KLTI, professor named Kim Sung-gon, who is English literature professor from Seoul National University, is one of my mentors. He's helped me a great deal over the years.
Wow.
And so he's running the organization. He's doing a great job. He's really, I think, helping to promote Korean literature abroad. So
because there's a lot of Chinese literature and a lot of Japanese literature in many schools in the West, and not in Korea. It's one of those things where it's unfortunate because Korean literature is so rich. The older literature from hundreds of years ago, and even modern literature is so rich, and it gives you a perspective of Korean society that you really don't get otherwise. And so I think it's an incredible thing that you're doing to help promote that.
it is definitely underrepresented, but the Korean Translation Institute is actually sort of putting their money where their mouth is. They fund translation grants for up-and-coming translators. They have something called the Translation Academy, which I'm teaching at, where they're actually training literary translators as well. So it's a very, very active, very comprehensive organization, and it's a lot of fun to be a part of.
Since we're talking a lot about Taekwondo throughout our our whole talk today, I'd love for us to see some examples of people doing Taekwondo, and so I know that you've called upon a couple of people to come and do some examples for us, but also Professor Kwak from Yonsei University has agreed to come and kind of talk to us a little bit.
Exactly.
어떤 거를 하실 건지 좀 말씀해 주세요.
We're going to show the basic, the building blocks of Taekwondo sparring.
Okay.
The basic kicking and some of the stepping.
Okay.
And then we'll show a little bit of how these things are applied.
Fantastic.
돌려차기. 몸통, 얼굴. 뒤차기. 네. 뒤차기 이렇게. 가장 태권도에서 파워가 가장 셉니다. 돌개차기.
Nice. Wow. Oh, 2 minutes.
Well, this will show the power. That's a 580 turn. 580 degrees.
That's incredible.
요거는
어지럽지
겨루기에서
않으세요?
사용 안 하고 데몬스트레이션. 예, 시범에서 많이 사용합니다. 자, 이제부터 이 기본기를 이용한 연결 발차기를 하겠습니다. 연결 발차기, 돌려차기, 연결. 받아차기. 빠른 발 나래차기.
Nice.
받아차기. Okay.
So what do you think about what we just saw?
Oh, it's this is what they do every day. It's the ABCs of Taekwondo. These are the building blocks. So now we're going to show you how these things fit together when you have actually a resisting opponent.
Okay.
And one of the beauties of the system of Taekwondo techniques is that there are only so many things that can happen. So you have a high level of predictability. You can manipulate the game, and this is where strategy comes in.
Okay.
So we're going to show you how technique becomes strategy.
태권도 기술 체계는
네.
앞발이 나오면 앞발을 받을 수가 있습니다. 또 뒷발이 나오면 뒷발을 받을 수가 있습니다. 그래서 뒷발을 몸통으로 받을 수 있고 상단은 얼굴로 받을 수 있습니다. 스텝 뛰고 앞발, 앞발 몸통, 다시 앞발, 앞발 상단, 뒷발, 뒷발 몸통, 뒷발, 뒷발 상단.
Can I give one small explanation here?
Sure.
And that is that what's beautiful about this system is it's based on the principle of empty and full space.
Okay.
Right? So you can only kick to an empty space. That's why you have to. Sometimes the space will present itself. Sometimes you'll have to create the space. So if we're standing like this, this is Hall. This is the idea of full and empty. If I kick here, he can't kick with this leg.
Yes.
뒷발로 차면은 앞발 차면은 이제 부딪히는 거잖아. 앞발 차발.
Okay.
That doesn't work. I can only kick here.
Okay.
Okay. So if I kick here, he can't kick with the same leg. He has to kick. Now this becomes empty, right? This is full. Okay. The way he can make this empty though is if he double kicks. So 나는 차면은 나리차기로 받는 거야. 뽕뽕. Both sides are empty. Okay. Also, if I kick here and he wants to kick with the back leg, 빠지다가. Yeah, boom. Okay. It's empty. Okay. So it all operates. It all turns around on this idea of full and empty space.
Interesting.
Okay. And that's I think one of the beautiful aspects of it. Actually, all sport does, but in Taekwondo, because we're using our long legs, it's even more obvious.
Yeah.
You can see it.
Wow.
Okay, so
It's like a clock that has to kind of go with the same grooves. Like it can't go.
gears exactly.
Interesting.
Okay. 연장해서.
돌려차기도 처음에 배울 때는 다 흘려 보내고 나서 차는 게 기초적인 거. 그 다음에 같이 차는 게 두 번째 연마가 된 다음에 차려고 할 때 뭐 움직일 때 먼저 차는 거. 그래서 먼저 차는 거가 가장 기술력이 높는데
네.
그런 건 상대방의 움직임을 보고 예측하고 차는 거기 때문에
그 예측하는 게
쉽지는 않죠. 서로
힘들 것
속이고
같아요.
속여야 되니까.
아하.
내가 차려고 하다가 나오는 거 보고 또 예측을. 그래서 돌려차기 하면 이 친구가
Yes.
카운터 받아차기를 하니까 받아차기 하면 바로 뒤차기로 연결하는. 그래서 처음에는 이 친구가 차고 받아찼는데 요번엔 내가 이걸 던져주고 다음 동 나오는 걸 보고 받아차는 거예요.
This is so cool.
그래서 바둑을 둘 때 한 수, 두 수 이렇게 두듯이 태권도 동작도
네.
처음엔 단발 공격, 그 다음에 연결 공격, 그래서 한 수 앞을 내다볼 수 있습니다.
그래서
상대방이.
도복이 까맣고 하얀가요? 교수님이 이 바쁘신 이 와중에 우리 찾아와 주셔서 너무 감사하고요.
아유, 별 말씀.
그 태권도의 그 미래를 위해서 참
네.
많은 좋은 일들을 하기를 참 부탁드리겠습니다.
고맙습니다. 오늘 방송으로 뭐 태권도의 체계, 기술 체계나 여러 가지 태권도에 대해서 좀 더 깊이 알았으면 좋은 시간이 되었으면 합니다.
네, 분명히 그럴 것 같습니다.
예,
예,
네,
감사합니다.
고맙습니다.
Do I believe that fate led me to the martial arts? I don't believe in fate, but I don't not believe in it. So that's a tough question to answer. I think that, you know, if you're in the right place at the right time, which I was, you can call that fate. I'm happy I was, and I'm happy that I chose Taekwondo. I think if I would have chose something else, I wouldn't have taken it as far as I did, karate or, you know, kung fu, for instance. I think that was the right martial art, the right sport for me at the right time. So, you know, whether it was serendipity or fate or chance, I don't know, but I was fortunate anyway.
What I remember from seeing Taekwondo really back in the day, even when it first came out in the Olympics, is very different than what I'm seeing nowadays.
Right.
And at some point there was a big shift, and it wasn't quite as active, and it wasn't like what we just saw just now nowadays. What do you think accounts for that change?
A big problem is that they have begin to use an electronic scoring chest protector, which now the chest protector decides what is a point and what isn't. Before, this was all done by human discernment, human judgment. The judges would watch the exchange of techniques, and if 2 out of 3 judges pressed a button within a certain window of time, a point would be scored, and it would be put up on the board, on the scoreboard. Now, for all body points, the chest protector itself registers the point. There's a sensor on the foot. They wear a little sock, and when the sensor makes contact at a certain level of force, then the machine, the system registers the point. But the problem is that the chest protector doesn't know what it's been hit with or how it's been hit.
I see.
And often it doesn't really know how hard it's been hit. So you can't question the system. So, you know, before, even if you kick somebody hard, if it was not, you know, a part of the Taekwondo syllabus, the vocabulary of Taekwondo, a judge wouldn't score it. You know, you could kick somebody really hard with a front kick, although it was very difficult to do, and it would never score. They just didn't believe that the front kick was a powerful enough technique to recognize in the Taekwondo match.
I see.
Now it doesn't matter how your foot hits that body protector. If it closes the circuit, the system puts it up.
Do you have any opinions about it going back to the way it was, or changing even more in a different way?
I think the rules are not a big problem. We've got the rules almost where we want them, but I think the electronic chest protector has really changed what you see happen in the ring. That's one problem. The other problem is I think Taekwondo culture has changed a lot.
What do you mean?
I mean that the idea of Taekwondo as just something that you do in a certain way to get a medal has taken a little bit of the fire out of it. it is a sport. There's a lot of etiquette involved. Of course, we respect our opponents, but when I was a player, I wanted to knock people out. You know, I wanted to kick them hard enough to make them fall down or get a standing 8 count. That was part of the fun. It was part of the excitement of the sport.
Yes.
And you knew that if you blinked, you know, you could be put to sleep. You could be put out. There were a lot of knockouts. There were a lot of, it was a very physical game. It was a fight. A fight that happened within, of course, you know, very, very clearly codified rules with a very strict sense of etiquette. You know, when the match was over, you know, you shake hands and you're friends, just like you see in mixed martial arts now.
Yes.
You don't have to dislike someone to want to, you know, kick them really hard. That idea that you're going into a fight, I don't see players approach the game like that anymore, and it really does take something out of it. There are times when, for instance, I'll see somebody do a jump spinning roundhouse kick, and the foot will land with power. They'll make a big sound, and no point will go up. And the opponent will immediately counter with a very light lead leg kick that will just sort of slide off the body protector, and the point will score. So there's no reason to risk a big, powerful technique if you can get a technique with something that, you know, you don't expose yourself doing.
That's really unfortunate.
It has to be fixed if we want people to watch Taekwondo first of all, and I think fall in love with it like I did, because it was the combination of speed, power, difficulty, and the idea that you are actually testing yourself in a fight with another human being that really attracted me.
A lot of people choose to do martial arts because of the meditative aspect, or because they feel like they want to become like Bruce Lee. And do you ever feel like that is an aspect that is really celebrated and done nowadays, or is that something that is not done?
For me, the philosophical values are found at the point where your body is being tested to its maximum. I would like to look at Taekwondo as a philosophical movement, but you have to be doing it to get any philosophical benefit from it. Meditation is fine. I have no problem with it. I'm sure that there's a lot of benefit to it, but you know, the idea that you can be meditating while you're actually training is something that I'd like to propose. The fact that, you know, Taekwondo is bifurcated into a so-called traditional side and a sports side. We need to show that all these values that supposedly exist in, you know, the more traditional forms of training actually exist in a greater degree in sport.
When you wrote your thesis and you addressed these issues, was anyone here able to take a look at that? And were they able to kind of have any kind of discussion or discourse based on that?
Again, if I would have gone into the field professionally, I could have maybe, you know, seen that dissertation lead to a greater discourse on the topic. I understand that it is well read and it is referred to and quoted in research in that area. So I don't think it's just collecting dust on my shelf. I think I had something of an impact with what I tried to say. Professor Kwok as well is sort of, you know, carried on in that vein of research. You know, people that really did Taekwondo, and for me that means that we're involved at a fairly high level in sparring. You know, a martial sport or a martial art, if it's not sparring based, for me it's lacking the most essential component.
So in order for Taekwondo to maintain its integrity, sparring is an absolute necessary part of its,
in my opinion,
being. Yeah. Last but not least, in terms of talking about sparring, you've been an athlete your whole life, and I imagine that sparring was an integral part of your training. What would you say is the most intense type of sparring that one can do?
Well, sparring someone better than you. You know, I've done a lot of that because, you know, the beautiful thing about Taekwondo that we saw in the demonstration is there are only so many ways you can kick with your legs, and there are only so many ways you can turn and step. So there's a high level of predictability. If I kick with this leg, this person has only 2 or 3 options, which means that I know what the possibilities are before I kick. That means I can plan to a certain extent my next choice, right? So it is like chess in that way. A pawn can only move this way, a king can only move this way, you know, a bishop can only move this way. Taekwondo is the same way. So I'm putting myself into a situation that, you know, is dangerous, but I have a level of predictability so that I can, in a certain sense, set up my opponent. Now, they can do the same thing to me.
Yes.
That's the bad news. And there's that moment where you know you're being set up. You know you've fallen for it, and you know it's coming.
Yeah.
That's you know, that's when the bear is catching you. Now, when you're catching the bear, when you know that you've set that guy up and you know it's gonna land, that's a feeling of physical sort of completion that I've never experienced in anything else.
Wow. As a martial artist, as someone who is a lover of Taekwondo and of Korean literature, what would you say about your experience here in Korea, having done both?
I think that I'm lucky to have been able to penetrate 2 very different cultures to the degree that I have, and try in my own way to find some correspondence, some common ground, and I think there is. I think that one of the things that these 2 share is on the emotional level. There is I think that Taekwondo is very close to the level of art if you approach it that way, and it does affect or create these, I guess, aesthetic responses. What I was just explaining is very much an aesthetic reaction. When it's kind of strange to hear someone describing kicking someone else in the face as an aesthetic experience.
As an
but
art, yeah.
It's not the face kicking itself, it's the process that, you know, because it's very, very difficult to kick a very skilled Taekwondo athlete in the face. You know, it is like, you know, a knockout in boxing, or, you know, it's the ultimate moment in the sport of Taekwondo. And to get to that point and reach it and experience it creates a very powerful aesthetic reaction. Just like when you read something powerful in literature. That's one place I found some common ground. But I'm just happy that I have these 2 families too.
Stephen, it's been such a pleasure talking to you and hearing about your experience here in Korea, hearing about your perspective on the martial art of Korea, and with all the good and all the potential things that really do need to change. I feel that you are a very strong voice in being able to be logical and not just emotional in approaching these issues, but realistic in what can and, you know, maybe needs to change, and that's for the survival of this sport that so many people do care about.
Well, thank you for the kind words, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure.
The pleasure was mine.